Welcome to the Re-Entry Archive. God is a Mushroom, an AMANITA Muscaria Experience Report, taken from erowid.org. Estimated dose 7 to 9 grams. Took half a large cap with tea at 8 p.m. Tea was made by boiling water and then pouring the hot water over the cap and letting it steep for 10 minutes or so, then filtering through a tea strainer. I took the tea with milk. I wish I had some honey, because even though I love soma, I dislike the taste, especially in tea. About 9:30, I ate another half of a dried cap. This was a medium-sized cap. I was feeling pretty good by 10 p.m. and high by 11. Then I chewed the last bit, about 1/5 of a medium cap, at around 11:30. The last bit seemed to be what pushed me over the edge. Again, total consumption estimated at 7 to 9 grams. Some observations from my notes taken at the time. The world is pulsing with energy. Each item in the room is alternatively expanding, contracting, and pulsing with life and energy. Colours are very intense and vivid, and the light seems to penetrate everything. Objects have an inner glow, much as I remember seeing things like when I was a child. Lighting seems to be like that big top lighting in the circus. There's a very high energy buzz. It's intellectual, religious, physical somehow. Work is effortless. I'm painting the ceiling of a very large room. I feel invincible. Not violent, but very strong. I'm experiencing some minor twitching convulsions, but they assist in the work. I urinated, but did not drink it, which I have done in the past. I am so high that I don't feel it necessary to extend or enhance this trip. I tried to turn my phone off, but I can't figure out how. This is the greatest drug in the world. I feel God pulsing through my muscles. Just realised that anyone can dance to every song because the beat is God. The pulse of energy that emanates through everything is God. I am dancing with God, literally. God is a mushroom, or rather, God created the mushroom so that man could participate in God's consciousness. Here began a long period of time where the word God was continually repeated in my mind, although it took a long time subjectively before I realised it. The situation was that I was sitting on the couch downstairs with this tremendous buzz going on. Everything in the universe was buzzing with energy, and I was on the verge of feeling overwhelmed. And all of a sudden I realised that the sound of the buzz was the word God. The meaning of the phrase "in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God" became crystal clear to me. I had become one with God. I'm not talking about a sublime intellectual experience. This was the most astounding, powerful, awe-inspiring experience I've ever had. I'm not a scholar on soma, but this was, I believe, a peak religious experience. I can easily imagine how people in ancient times would be in awe of this mushroom. I had the distinct sense that the mushroom was identifying itself through my consciousness as God. After this, I began to have heavier convulsions and resumed painting. However, I was dropping the paint roller at fairly regular intervals. I began to notice that the convulsions were cycling through my body, and I started to worry. Just a bit that they would affect my heart. For example, my hand would twitch, and then my feet, and then my arms. I was afraid that my heart would stop when its turn came up. But after my legs buckled and I did not fall, I stopped worrying about that. I also knew, because genuinely my memory was good, that this mushroom isn't a killer. He's my protector and my counsellor. Another idea is that somehow Soma is God, is a means of experiencing man's mind through the joy of being. It's hard to describe what I mean, but I had the distinct impression that somehow God is only able to experience existence vicariously. Somehow human beings and other sentient beings are the lenses through which God views existence. The mushroom is the catalyst. For some reason, the time frame of 350 million years kept running through my mind. This may be from one of Terence McKenna's books, but the idea that Soma is very, very ancient was in my head. I also went through a short period of time where I was just standing and swaying, looking around and getting off on the trip. There were no heavy visuals, but one interesting feature was seeing electrons or something similar in the air in front of me and all around. They were very, very tiny, multicoloured points, almost like gnats, but lots of them, and they were flying all around. They looked similar to the stars one sees after a bump on the head. It was very strange. I knew at this point that I was totally stoned and decided I was done with the painting. Also, I knocked a radio on the floor and couldn't figure out how to get it working again. Finally, at 3 AM, I went to bed. I was glad that I'd stopped when I did, as far as not taking any more. I had a similar experience 20 years ago on Cubensis, but this was more of a bad trip, with things melting and many negative fears. However, this experience was generally positive, with little or no fear. The twitching seems to have been a component of the Soma buzz for me, so I'm not fearful of that effect. I would certainly not drive or operate heavy machinery under a trip like this. In hindsight, I should have walked outside and looked around, but this was 3 AM and I was covered in paint, and my dogs would have woken up. All in all, this was an astounding trip. I still have another dose left, maybe 9 grams. That would be an intense trip, but the question for me at this point is when. This stuff is so strong, it's not something I would do every day, or even every week. On another tip from Donald Teeter's works, don't drink carbonated beverages with Soma. I found this out the hard way. Doing so will cause nausea. As it is, I drink milk with mushrooms. Rarely, if ever, do I experience any nausea. So take care out there, folks, and respect Soma. The AMANITA muscaria mushroom, the one with the red cap and white spots, is deeply interwoven with the winter solstice, shamanism, and Christmas. In Siberia, shamans consume AMANITA in order to enter trance states, communicate with spirits, and fly through other worlds. This links to Santa Claus, a figure in red and white, travelling across the sky entering homes through the chimney, where the shaman would enter when snow blocked the doors. Reindeer also consumed these mushrooms and were visibly tripping in Siberia, and Siberian shamans would drink the urine of reindeer who had eaten them, a practice that concentrates the active alkaloids. Reindeer, as flying beings, are also part of the symbolism associated with Christmas. Shamans would often take and hang the mushrooms to dry on pine trees, or place them in socks by the fire, exactly the imagery of Christmas stockings and ornaments. The mushroom itself becomes a gift from God beneath the evergreen. Similarly, the red cap with white dots matched the holiday palette, as seen in Santa's outfit, wrapped gifts and holly berries in the snow. There were several very distinct experiences of archetypes during this trip. The trickster archetype showed itself in the twitching convulsions, as well as dropping the roller and the radio on the floor. Here, the archetype was trying to humble the traveller's attempt to control the experience. The trickster was working to remind the traveller that Soma is not just a tool, but an agent with its own will. However, during this experience there was also an encounter with the father archetype. This archetype is about order, law, protection, responsibility, and transcendental meaning. An encounter with this archetype can feel like being handed a source code for reality, rules, a heartbeat, a moral centre, a purpose. It often appears when the psyche needs a sense of direction, moral grounding, or permission to carry life forwards. The traveller had an interaction with the father archetype through the revelation that the witness pulsing of the universe is the heartbeat of God, and again in the traveller's repeated hearing of the word God amongst the cosmic buzz. After this experience, it may be useful to translate the felt cosmic order into daily ethical adjustments. The traveller could ask themselves, given this new felt truth, what small rules should they live by? This could pertain to honesty, presence with family, or a new creative practice. They could think about making a ritual commitment, a simple vow or promise to themselves that channels that guiding principle encountered in the trip. Maybe they could write a self-reflecting statement each morning, or dedicate some time each week to paint and reflect on the experience. It may also be important to take this time as an invitation to consider authority reparenting. If there are perhaps father wounds that exist, there could be value in doing a reparenting practice. Perhaps writing a letter to the inner child with the father's supportive voice, or imagine the father placing a hand on your shoulder and saying a stabilizing phrase to the inner child that they need to hear. Take this opportunity to be responsible, but without grasping. Choose one concrete area in life, finances, parenting, and steward this responsibly. Set boundaries so this father protector does not become a martyr. This was a fascinating trip, and it shows that Soma is an archetypal doorway to the mystery, both cosmic and childlike, protective and tricksterish. Integration here means keeping that pulse alive within the ordinary rhythm of life, and honouring the mushroom as the ancient teacher that it is.